Imagine if you slaved away on a movie for 2 or 3 years, then one day it was just remade, and you didn't have any control over the end result. You'd be a little annoyed, wouldn't you? That right there is the position that these people found themselves in, and they were not too chuffed about it. I'm Gareth from Whatculture, and these are film and TV remakes that pissed off the original creators. Fame! Alan Parker's beloved 1980 musical won 2 Oscars. It spawned multiple TV shows and inspired countless stage productions. With such a successful franchise, a movie remake was somewhat inevitable, and 2009 was the year that it finally happened. But this new version didn't exactly have Parker's blessing, despite the team behind the remake claiming otherwise. In fact, Parker felt like the original Fame was his baby, and likened the experience of having the movie remade to being mugged. Jeez. Chatting with The Telegraph after the remake's opening weekend, the director pointed fingers at the producers for failing to contact him before making it, while also calling the project dreadful. He then complained that the studio could just take his original work and mess with it however they wanted, admitting that he found this process galling. In his words, because the copyright is owned by the studio, as with almost all American feature films, they can do a remake like this. It's extremely galling. There is no other area of the arts where you can do that. Parker even added that he was considering pursuing legal action over the remake's use of the Fame logo, claiming that distributor MGM did not have the rights to use it. He definitely made them remember his name, didn't he? Gavin and Stacey. Love him or hate him, there's no denying James Corden's talent and impact on British pop culture. Thanks to the brilliant fan favourite sitcom Gavin and Stacey, Corden and co-creator Ruth Jones made a big mark with TV audiences, leading the show to become one of the most viewed sitcoms in the history of the BBC. Because of its success, it was picked up by several studios who wanted to make it for US viewers. NBC tried to make it happen in 2008, ABC had a pilot set up that never actually aired, and finally Fox got their hands on it in 2013, remaking it with the title Us and Them. With Fox, 13 episodes were ordered, but only 6 were made before the production shut down. In the end, no episodes were even aired. James Corden has never been shy about his opinions on the various failed attempts to remake the show that put him on the map. Hearing about the US network's desire to show more bickering and conflict between the characters, Corden said, "Our show wasn't about that. It was about how people's everyday lives involve very little conflict. Most people like their friends. We wanted to hold the mirror up to real life. American networks just wanted there to be fights all the time. It's not a surprise they were never able to make a go of it. It just goes to show, oh, if it's not broken, don't fix it." The Wicker Man. The 2006 remake of The Wicker Man was one of the worst movies of that year, and it's really only remembered today because of how unintentionally hilarious Nicolas Cage's over-the-top acting was in it. Not the bees! Oh, classic. On the other hand though, the 1973 original is better in every conceivable way. This was a case where the original movie is so good that the remake just didn't really stand a chance. And sure enough, it flopped, was hated by all, and is now basically a meme. But the negative reaction towards the movie didn't just come after it had released. In fact, a full year before it hit cinemas, filmmaker Robin Hardy, who directed the original, started firing shots at the team behind the remake, accusing them of being clueless. In addition, the thought of the remake annoyed him so much that he even asked his lawyers for help in removing his name from the marketing materials, which had him listed as the screenwriter of the original. Hardy then went on to direct The Wicker Tree in 2011, a spiritual sequel to his 1973 version of The Wicker Man. It was poorly received by critics, but Hardy, continuing the trash talk, said that it was 1,000 times better than the remake. Yep, he did not like it, did he? MASH. This is an interesting one, because unlike the others on this list, Larry Gelbart actually created this ill-advised spin-off to the cultural phenomenon that was MASH. MASH is one of the greatest shows ever made. A touching, hysterical and daring sitcom / tragicomedy, bursting with great characters, iconic storylines and unforgettable episodes. And although After MASH is not technically a remake, But a spin-off, it is so far removed from the original's level of humor and intelligence that it can barely be considered a rebooted successor to it. Gelbart, who created and wrote much of the original show, would later go on to say that Aftermath was a big mistake, and that whilst it was a good idea for a show on paper, it didn't work as a continuation of his original smash hit. But he didn't stop there, instead doubling down on his comments and making it abundantly clear how he felt about Aftermath looking back, saying, "Once I saw what was going on, I knew I had made the wrong choice. There's a very special place in my core when it comes to MASH. I was not pleased to have done anything to sully its name or memory, but I managed to do it anyway." Oh, what a shame. Aladdin. Now bear with me while I transform into Captain Obvious for the remainder of this sentence, but Disney is one of the biggest and most powerful companies within the entertainment world, and they're easily one of the most recognizable brands on the planet. Honestly, their IP is unparalleled. With all that in mind, they should be able to compensate their creatives properly, right? Say if they remade one of their animated classics, then the people who made that classic would receive a check in the mail, wouldn't they? Well, apparently not. At least not in this particular case. The 2019 remake of Aladdin was a massive billion-dollar hit, but one of the writers of the original, Terry Rossio, wasn't exactly pleased in the run-up to its release, because Disney failed to provide him with any sort of compensation. So frustrated and annoyed, Rossio did the only thing he could do. He went on Twitter and started beefing. In a series of tweets, Rossio stated that Disney offered him zero compensation, not even a t-shirt or a pass to the park, explaining that when he wrote the original, the idea of a live-action remake wasn't included in his contract. As a result, Disney was legally allowed to ignore Rossio while they produced the remake, something that the writer clearly and understandably felt wronged by. It's just not good, is it? Teletubbies. Anne Wood's comments on the Teletubbies remake were as much of an attack on the show as they were on the very notion of recreating old media. When the remake was announced in 2015, Wood was quick to tell reporters that she was sad about the whole thing, and a little bit disappointed that the studios were going through with it. She said, "I'm a bit sad. It comes down to the time we're in though. People feel safer making hits of the past rather than investing in something new." She didn't stop there, however, as she went on to say she wouldn't be watching the remake at all, and that the whole idea of remaking what's already past is stifling creativity and ruining children's programming because nothing new is coming out. I'm with you, Anne. My days of watching Teletubbies are now well and truly over. Give me some of that Pingu goodness any day. The Lion King. Disney's other mega successful 2019 remake, The Lion King, was also criticized by the people who worked on the original. In this case, though, it wasn't just one guy on Twitter, it was an entire group of artists speaking to the Huffington Post. The outlet contacted 13 people who contributed to the original film, and the majority of comments they received took a negative stance against the remake. David Stefan, who worked on the animated version's Circle of Life scene, made his dislike of the remake clear, saying that if you polled the crew of the original Lion King, most of them would say, "Why did you really have to do that? It kind of hurts." Stefan also criticized the performances in the remake, labeling them wooden while also lambasting the decision to depict the animals in such a realistic way. It was a bit creepy. Elsewhere, 3 anonymous animators said that they weren't even planning to watch the remake, while another admitted that there was a lot of resentment against the Lion King and other live-action remakes from the people who worked on the original. Considering that they didn't get any compensation, you can't really blame them, can you? Charmed. The creator of the original cult classic TV show Charmed, Constance Burge, left the show after its second season due to creative differences with the network and the other producers. This would cause other shows to struggle to keep their footing, but didn't seem to matter much to Charmed as it went on to run for 8 seasons and nearly 200 episodes. Massively popular and influential despite not aging particularly well, Charmed was rebooted at the beginning of 2018 with a whole new cast and crew. One of the show's original stars, Holly Marie Combs, who played Piper, took to Twitter after the reboot's announcement in fury at the decision, stating that the CW were capitalizing on the success of the original and just trying to grab some quick cash from something that had already been done. She also took issue with the advertisements, which described the new show as a feminist reboot. Combs took this to mean that the original wasn't seen as a feminist show, tweeting, "Guess we forgot to do that the first go around. Ouch." Dawn of the Dead. Zack Snyder's movie directorial debut, the 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead, had some big shoes to fill, considering that George Romero's 1978 original is considered one of the best horror movies of all time, and one of the zombie genre's definitive works. And while the remake does have its fans out there, Romero was certainly not one of them in the time before his passing in 2017, and spoke ill of Snyder's effort on a few different occasions over the years. In an interview with Simon Pegg in 2005, Romero said that the remake lost its reason for being after the first 15 or 20 minutes, while also calling it a video game, and adding that there was nothing going on underneath. Ouch. Then, in a 2013 interview with The Telegraph, he continued his assault, saying that he just didn't like the remake very much, and that it completely missed the point of his original movie, which he felt could only have been done properly in the late 1970s. So yeah, if it wasn't clear, Romero was not a lover of Snyder's creation here. Coupling. Stephen Moffat is these days best known for his role as screenwriter and showrunner for Doctor Who, and for creating the Sherlock TV series alongside Mark Gatiss. Before these two shows launched him into superstardom though, he helmed a now cult classic British sitcom called Coupling. The show followed a group of friends as they made their way through life, going on dates, getting into mishaps, and generally making the most of things. Compared to other ensemble sitcoms that were doing well stateside, it was eventually picked up in 2003 to be made for American audiences. However, as with the majority of British remakes, it ended up being a dismal failure. With its poor scripts and terrible casting, Moffat would later say that NBC effed it up because they intervened constantly, trying to change the way the show came together during production. On the plus side, Coupling's US failure led to NBC's last-ditch effort to make a British sitcom for American audiences, which led to them successfully remaking The Office. So there is a silver lining to it all. Red Dawn. The 2012 remake of Red Dawn had a hugely troubled road to the screen. Filmed at the end of 2009, it was initially slated for a 2010 release, but it was pushed back indefinitely when Studio MGM encountered some serious financial difficulties. The movie was then edited to remove China as an invading force, a move that was motivated by potential box office gains rather than artistic merit. With all these delays and production issues, the buzz surrounding the movie wasn't all that good, and this negativity was compounded by the fact that John Milius, who wrote and directed the 1984 original, decided to publicly trash it in a March 2010 interview. After reading the remake script, Milius, who wasn't actually involved in the production, told the LA Times that he found the movie stupid and terrible, adding that the filmmakers were more concerned with cool action scenes than a compelling story. He also took shots at remakes in general, claiming that no one wants their movie remade, and in fairness, you can't really blame Milius for having this outlook, considering that Red Dawn, when it finally released in 2012, was ultimately received rather horribly. He tried to warn us. Spaced. One of British TV's best ever sitcoms, Spaced is these days regarded as a cult classic, and helped put the likes of Edgar Wright, Nick Frost, and show creators / lead stars Simon Pegg and Jessica Stevenson, later Hines, on the map. Without Spaced, there would be no Hot Fuzz or Shaun of the Dead, and Simon Pegg may not have become the megastar he is today. Airing for 2 short but sweet seasons between 1999 and 2001, the show was picked up by Fox to be remade for American audiences in 2007. Edgar Wright was initially approached to helm a US remake back in '99, but turned it down due to his firm belief that it wouldn't work. Because the joy of Spaced is that it's people in North London acting out stuff from American films. Pegg and Stevenson, meanwhile, weren't even approached by Fox about the proposed remake, which they both labelled as a disrespectful move. Pegg released a long statement about the show in 2008, where he proclaimed his anger over the studios using their ideas without their permission, and banking on the success of Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead. Both Pegg and Wright were also outraged by the press's failure to talk about Hines' involvement in the original show, accusing them of neglecting the show's female voice. When the US version was released as a TV movie, Pegg called watching it a painful experience. And it's hard to argue with that. Child's Play. Updating the formula of doll comes to life and kills people for modern times, the 2019 remake of Child's Play tried something different with the original concept. Chucky was turned from a bog-standard doll into a cutting-edge piece of tech, which did give the whole endeavor a slight air of freshness. But even if the movie was the Citizen Kane of horror, it sounds like there was nothing it could have done to avoid the scathing comments of Christine Elise, one of the actresses who starred alongside the original version of the Chucky doll. Elise, who first appeared in the franchise as Kyle in Child's Play 2, had some rather colourful words for the team behind the remake, making her negative stance on the project crystal clear during a 2018 interview. In her words, "I think it's a douche move, absolutely. I don't know why they would F with a healthy franchise. And nobody from the original franchise is involved. They're not gonna have Brad Dourif, they're not gonna have Don, and they're not gonna have any of us." Now, Elise does have a point about the health of the franchise, considering that 2017's Cult of Chucky was received fairly well. But then again, the remake turned a nice profit, which, let's be honest, is all the studio really cares about here, isn't it? Scrubs Med School. The first 8 seasons of the medical comedy drama Scrubs proved to be incredibly popular, securing a vast fandom and raking in record-breaking viewership. The last episode of Season 8, my finale, was set to be the last episode of the show's run, with creator and showrunner Bill Lawrence looking to create a spin-off titled Scrubs Med School, with a whole new host of characters and a new setting. However, ABC Studios did not like this idea, and instead elected to renew Scrubs for an unprecedented 9th season with a new cast. Most of the writing team and original cast left because of the decision, and Lawrence, who stayed on to write the new season, later reflected that it was a weird time. He said ABC was a mess. You know how coked up the network heads were? I don't think they even meant to renew us. But I just kept my mouth shut and cashed those checks. Besides, you know what else was airing on ABC in 2008? Lost. As far as I'm concerned, as long as we aren't doing as bad as that goddamn mess, we're doing alright. All told, the final season of Scrubs was arguably worse than Lost though, and was subject to a critical slaughtering upon its release. Lawrence would admit the whole thing was a bit of a bad move, and that it would have worked better had the studio allowed him to make the spin-off he wanted rather than banking off the success of the show's earlier run. Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans. The remake of Bad Lieutenant is another one of those movies where Nicolas Cage goes a bit insane. Remember that scene where he threatens to kill a defenseless old lady, verbally abuses her, and then pulls out a gun? Yep, Cage gonna Cage. But this madness wasn't just exclusive to the screen. The movie was surrounded by drama that stemmed from the director of the 1992 original, Abel Ferrara's complete and utter disdain towards the remake, with the filmmaker making some truly wild comments aimed at everyone involved in the production, including Cage himself. In an over-the-top reaction, he told The Guardian that everyone involved in the remake should die in hell. And in a similar manner to Alan Parker's opinion on Fame, he likened the notion of remakes to having something stolen from him. In his words, "It's like when you get robbed. It's just a horrible feeling, and I don't understand why they would do it." When they announced it, I called Harvey Keitel, who was the star of the original, and he says, "Yeah, it's bad, but don't say anything stupid, Abel." So much for that. But Ferrara didn't stop there. He labelled the writer of the remake as an idiot, and also called out Cage for having the nerve to take on the role that Harvey Keitel had inhabited in the original. "Does Nick Cage need the money?" he said. Yeah, probably. On a separate occasion, he also said that he hoped the team behind the remake would die in an explosion. Anyone just please take this man to PR school, because my goodness. Scream. Though he acted as an executive producer on Scream's first season, Wes Craven was quite vocal about how he disapproved of the show's creative decisions. On paper, a Scream TV show sounds like it should be amazing, and whilst it certainly has its fans, it never truly captured the full feel of Craven's original and masterful films. The director and horror maestro's biggest issue with the show was the writer's decision to do away with the classic ghost face mask. Once he left the show, he would say how let down he was by the decision, proclaiming it to be an example of fixing what isn't broken, and stating that they shouldn't have messed with it because it was perfect just the way it was. Unlike others on this list, however, this one has a slightly happier ending, as Craven would also describe the show as fun whilst admitting he actually enjoyed the scripts. So there you go, don't say we never end on a positive note.